Yep, I'm recording now. Thank you. All right, so over the weekend, we had a couple of challenges. We're going to recreate Hacker News using just raw HTML, CSS. So if you don't know what Hacker News is a website developed by Y Combinator. Y Combinator is a, oh my God, I'm just drawing a blank on it. It is a, someone help me. I know someone knows what Y Combinator is.
Accelerator.
Yep, thank you. It's an accelerator. It's probably the most prestigious accelerator out there. They have produced companies like Stripe, Airbnb, just a plethora of different companies have gone through Y Combinator. Dropbox, I don't know if Box went through there, but yeah, just a plethora of unicorn companies. So this is Hacker News. It's literally just raw HTML, CSS. So we're going to try to recreate all, like, not every single one of these, but like just recreate maybe the nav bar and maybe one of these. I'll try to get as close as possible in like the next 45 minutes, but let's go ahead and get started. So yeah, Hacker News is pretty cool. So let me go ahead and fork this over to my personal GitHub. So it's forking over. I really miss, they used to have a scanner thing indicating that it was scanning over to your GitHub, but now it's just a loading indicator, which whatever. All right, so now I'm going to clone this down to my local machine. Let me bring up, where am I at? I'm gonna bring up a new VS Code window. So here I am. I'm going to zoom in just so it's a little more readable. All right, so I'm going to CD into desktop, CP challenges, November challenges. I'm going to list everything out. Those are my challenges. I'm going to git clone into November challenges. I'm going to list everything out just to make sure I can see it. Where is it? Hacker News. So I'm going to CD into Hacker News, list everything out. I've just got that README. I'm going to code -R, open it up, Hacker News challenge into a new VS Code window. All right, cool. All right, so here it is. Hacker News is a very popular website for Hacker, the dev community. You can find jobs and a lot of relevant news. Think of it as Reddit for the hacker community where you can upvote, blah, blah, blah. Your goal in this challenge is to write HTML code that simulates Hacker News. Don't worry about styling yet. We'll get to that later. We'll just want the overall look down. Okay. So what's great is that we have Hacker News here. And so what's the first thing we should do before we even write a line of HTML?
Look at the source code.
I'm sorry?
Like look at the source code. And
say look at the source?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, we can definitely look at the source. So what I did was I opened up the Chrome developer tools. I highly recommend Chrome. The other browsers have similar capabilities, but Chrome and I think Firefox are pretty much the most robust. So I did Command Option I, and I opened up the Chrome developer tools direct, or I can go up to the little 3 dots, I think that's the hamburger, and go to More Tools and click Developer Tools. That also opens up the Chrome developer tools. And if I, over here, we've got a bunch of tabs. If I go over to elements, we can inspect the HTML on the chain. We can inspect not just the HTML, but the CSS as well. So I can literally hover over part of the HTML and it'll highlight what element that I'm actually hovered over inside of the DOM or the inside of the HTML. So it looks like these are all tables. I'm not familiar with tables. I don't want to learn tables right now just because for time constraint, but it looks like everything here is a table. And you can definitely copy this, almost I don't want to say copy and paste that, but don't, more often than not, will ever work the way it's supposed to. So don't think you can sit here and just copy all of this and have it directly correlate to what's on the web page. It might work for Hacker News because Hacker News is very minimal as far as styling and HTML. But if you go to like something like Stripe Enterprise, or let's go to Stripe. Like if you go to Stripe Enterprise and try to copy their HTML and CSS, I highly doubt you'll be able to emulate what they're doing on from an HTML and CSS perspective. So this is all, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So you don't think you can just inspect this and be able to copy it, like copy all of this and have it all work similar to this website, because it won't work. So when I click on that, it like changes.
One of the questions I had about the Hacker News source code and maybe why they did what they did, they used nested tables, and I thought that was kind of redundant. And I was wondering, why would you put a table inside of a table for this layout? Because you don't need to. It seems like.
Yeah, I don't know. That could have just been the design choice of the developer team at the time.
It's likely it's being developed. So the code, the HTML is going to be being written by an application. And so to componentize it, they probably, the result of whatever component they were using produced a table. And then they wanted to use that inside of a table layout. So that's most likely why it is the way it is.
Yeah, I don't know how this could literally just be. Yeah, you're right, because this is definitely like an application. It's not just raw HTML. But I see there's a lot of inline styling here. You can see that, which is that's rarely ever seen or used in the real world, in real world applications. Just unique. It could have been gone through a compiler that did all this. But yeah, not quite sure. But we're not going to be using tables because I'm not familiar with tables. I'm going to might use a grid or Flexbox. But okay. So we can actually see what Hacker News looks like. So let's just try to emulate this. So before, as Brian said, I can inspect the source code or in Chrome Developer Tools, but just to get an idea of like how they did it. But the first thing I personally would do once I'm relatively proficient at CSS and HTML is actually just like whiteboard, or what they call wireframing this. So if I could come over here and do limnew, and I talked about this in today's lecture, wireframing is very similar to that of whiteboarding, just like you would whiteboard or pseudocoding, like a challenge. So before I write any HTML, I want to just whiteboard this thing. I'm just using limnew. You can use Google Docs. You can literally use a piece of paper, which I usually use, just because it's easier to just write everything on a piece of paper. So that's what whiteboarding is, or I'm sorry, wireframing. So I'm just gonna come over here. And so wireframing, I want to essentially put a box around every single element that I would create or use an HTML element for, or an HTML tag for. So let's just talk about, let's specifically use like the nav bar. So I'm going to come over here in limnew. Again, you can use anything else, anything you want. I'm just going to create a box. Oh, that's really thick. Maybe that's a little bit better. So I'm just going to create a box, and this box will represent the web page. And the first thing I want to do, I'm going to kind of create things a little over, like a little exaggerated as far as size go. So that part, this little box, is this entire, including the nav bar, and it's all this gray area. So now I want to do the nav bar. So the nav bar will be its own HTML element. So I'm going to create the nav bar. So let's say like that's the nav bar. So that's going to be an HTML element or like a tag. Let's look at here. So notice how we have got like a logo, a title, and all these other links. And we also have login, a link all the way to the right. So these are kind of separate. So you want to group similar components or elements on the screen or in the web page into its own element. So this entire section right here should be encapsulated in its own element. And then this login might be its other, like its own element as well. So inside of the nav bar, I'm going to create one big element, and then I'm going to create another element for the login. And then inside of here, I'm going to create elements for each one of these links. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a lot. I don't know if I'll have enough room, but this is all just whiteboarding or like, yeah, wireframing. It doesn't have to be pretty. So I can literally just do this and be like, okay, these are all individual tags. They might be link tags, they may be buttons, they may be images, doesn't really matter right now. I just want to get all of them. I don't even know how many I'm making right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There, that's good enough. And now typically I can keep on going on down to here. So this entire thing will be one element. This 2 will be another element. And then within that element, there'll be like an image for an upvote, the title, and then maybe a link to the source of this post. And then also have all these. But for sake of time, I'm just going to work on the title right now. And if there is time, I'll work on a couple of these. And it might not look exactly like this. I just want to get a rough estimation down, or a rough architecture of how that should look. All right, so I'm just going to use this as a guide right now. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Well, before I get started, what questions do you have about that process? None? All right. Also, typically you might want to label what each element is. So like maybe this element right here will be a div, maybe where that image is of hacker news right here, that might be, that more likely than not will be an image. So like right here would be an image. This could be like an H1 tag because it's a little bit thicker. And these all could be possibly link tags, or A tags as they call them. All right. So I'm inside Hacker News. The first thing I'll do is touch index.html. So I'm creating an index.html file and code index.html. So I'm opening up my index.html file inside here. And what are the like 2 things that HTML file needs? What are the 2 main tags or elements?
HTML tag.
So I need the HTML tag. So HTML. Okay. And what goes inside the HTML tag? There's 2 elements or 2 tags that go inside the HTML.
Header and body.
Header and body. Is it header like so?
Head.
And body.
Just head, I think.
It's just head. Okay. So it's the head and body. And what's the purpose of the head tag? What goes in the head tag?
Your links.
Your links? When you mean your links, what do you mean by links? Like
Well-
links, like
Well, you'll link to like a style sheet, and you can link to.
okay.
I think
So you're sorry. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, links to the style sheet, and you can put the title or whatever of the page in there too.
Okay, so it's anything like links to external data, like so links to your style sheet. It could be you can bring in your title, which will show up in the tab. So like up here, that will be your title. It's pretty much all like I think of the head and body just like a person. The inside your head is your brain, so that's where all the data. That's where you're bringing outside data, such as like your style sheets, any metadata about your HTML will go inside the head tag. And then inside the body is where all the content goes that will show up on the screen. So anything that you'll see in your web browser will go within the body. So you can do the title in here. Whoop. Title, we like hacker news. And I'm just going to open this up in the web browser by doing open index.html. Let's see if this works. Cool. So like nothing shows up on the screen because nothing's within my body. But if I look up here in the title, I get hacker news. So you can manually type all this stuff out, but there are some shortcuts. So if I do just exclamation point, it brings up the emit abbreviation, and if I click enter, it'll essentially create a basic boilerplate HTML architecture. So it brings up this doc type HTML with the language of English, and it brings in some default meta data about my HTML. So it brings in all of this, brings in the title, default. So you can do that. So this doc type, this indicates that, hey, this file is in fact an HTML file. It's pretty simple. There's other shorthand. So if I type in HTML, I can bring in this stuff as well. So I got HTML5 boilerplate. I've got this is not correct. And I also have this HTML5 boilerplate that also brings in some additional boilerplate information. So this boilerplate brings in a couple more things, specifically links to a style sheet if I want some, and also brings in the script tag. And the script tag could pretty much go anywhere inside of your HTML tag, but typically you kind of want it in the head. If you do it on bottom, the reason why this is default on the bottom is because your HTML will mount first and then it'll run the script tag at the very end of the file. But this async defer gets around that process, so I can just keep that in the head. And I cover async defer in the lecture. All right. So I'm not going to link to any style sheets now. I haven't created any.
What was the command you did for that again?
I think for this one, the boilerplate.
Yeah, I just missed it. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. And you might need to install a snippet for that. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to just bring this up in the head because I want all that logic to be in the head. Hacker news. Cool. So I'm going to look at Limnu and build out the navigation first. So in here, all right. So for hacker news, for that header, or I'm sorry, for that nav bar, I'm going to create, what tag should I use to create the nav bar? It's totally up to us to what we want. It's typically usually two different tags we will use for the nav bar to encapsulate the nav bar. Does anybody know?
Table.
Header and nav.
It could be header, it could be nav. So we're not going to, I don't want to use a table because I don't, yeah, I don't know how the table element, the table tag works. So I'm going to avoid the table tag.
A
If
div?
you go ahead,
A div?
you can be a div. Yep. So I heard header, which is good. Nav, which is good. Div. It's all about the divs. So when in doubt, use the div. You can use the nav as well. I'm just going to use a div for right now because I think the nav has specific characteristics about it that make it a little more difficult for me to create that. But I'm not quite sure. But I'm used to using div. So I'm going to create a div for the nav. So that div correlates to this entire orange part. So if I bring up here, so that div is this like big surrounding element, that top parent element. Next, I want to create this entire section right here. So I'm going to create maybe another div to encapsulate all of these. So div, all right. So I've got a div that encapsulates this button group or this link group. So that would be this inner div right here. And now I can go ahead and create like the rest of the images or the rest of these. And again, I don't have to hold, I might make some edits to this, but so I'm going to make an image tag, source. Just going to keep that. And that's where my image is going to be. I'm going to make an H tag or a tag. It says hacker news. And I'm going to create the rest of those links. So it says new, past, comments, ask, show, jobs, and submit. This link, what is the A tag? What is that? What does that do?
It's your link to other web pages.
Yep. So the A tag is specifically used for links. So up here, notice how I hover over it. It gives that little, the finger thumb or like the cursor. Yeah, what is it? Grab or whatever. The pointer. That's what it's called. So that's a link. So what do links need? Well,
URL?
so links need to
A herf.
href, and this, oh geez, what just happened? And this is essentially where I want to go to. So if I said I want to go to google.com, I think it's like google.com. If I refresh this, just let's look at what this looks like. Got Hacker News. Okay, it goes to google.com, which I don't like. So there is a way to go directly to google.com. Is it instead of how it appends this to the absolute path of where that is? Does anybody know how do I make it go directly to google.com?
HTTP.
Is that what I need? HTTP is it slash
I think there's
colon
two.
/
forward / like so? Is that it?
You need a colon after
Colon.
HTTP, I think.
All right. Like so?
Yes. And an
No,
S.
Before the slash.
No, 4 slashes.
Oh, right here. Is that it? Let's try it out. So if I go back, I refresh it. There, it took me to Google. Cool. So I'm just going to keep these just forward slashes right now because I don't have another web page to go to for that. But let's look at, so let's actually download. Whoop. Y Combinator Startup School logo. Go to images. I'm going to download an image. Save image as. I think I already have Y Combinator. YComb PNG. And I'm going to drag that image into here. So I've got Y Combinator. And now my source is just y-com.png. Cool. Now if where'd my Hacker News go? Oh, I'm going to open that up again. Open index.html. Oh. Index.html. Cool. Oh, it's a big image. All right, so I'm probably gonna have to adjust that image. But before I do that, let's finish up that. So I've got a div here that encapsulates all these links, and then I also need a link over here. So outside of that div, I could create another div, but I'm just gonna create another H tag or A tag. Like so. And do login. All right. I think that's good for now. And then I'm going to start styling. So I've got there. Ooh. So notice how the Y Combinator logo, all the Hacker News are on one line. And then we have the login on the next line. So these are all in the same div. So if I inspect by doing Command Option I can inspect the body so I can see everything. Cool. And if I want to see the logo, the login, there we go. All right. So now let's go ahead and actually start styling this. So I need to make this entire bar orange so I can start styling this. So if this entire thing consists of the nav, I'm going to create a class or an ID, it depends on what you want, called Nav Bar. Now, if I refresh here, I don't see anything change, but I notice up here I have this thing called Nav Bar. If I click on that, I can come down here and say element style. Notice there's no styling for that element. I can say like background color, orange or something. And if I click enter, whoa, didn't spell background wrong. Notice how now the background is orange. So that's kind of what I want. All right, but I want to actually write that in RCSS. So I'm gonna clear the terminal and create a styles.css file. So I created a styles.css file. I'm opening it up, pinning it to VS Code, split the screen. So I've got my styles and everything over here. So how do I go about importing my CSS file into my index.html?
You just type it in that href.
Inside the href? Oh, right here? Yep.
Yeah.
So I've got this link. The relationship is style sheet. And now I need to provide the path to where the styles file is. So it's in the same directory. That's great. There we go. So now let's create a background color for that nav bar. So how do I target, what selector should I use to target the nav bar class?
.nav bar.
.nav bar. What if my class, what if this was an ID? How would I target it then?
Hashtag.
So hashtag navbar. Yep. So if it was an ID, it should be hashtag targeting these, use hashtag like so. Otherwise, if it's a class, I just use the dot, the period. So if dot nav bar, so I changed the nav bar to a class. So now I want to do background color, and I want to use the Y Combinator's logo color.
F6. F6. Yeah.
F, what?
You're actually using the number, sorry.
So I'm using the RGB value. You can literally type in colors like white if you want and hover over it, and you can select the same color. It could be RGB values, RGBA, it could be hex. I'm just using RGB. So there's my nav bar. All right, so if I refresh, there we go. That's very large. Let's go ahead and change this image. So I'm going to add an ID to the image and make it the logo. So I want to change the height. So logo, height, I'm going to say 18 pixels. Always put semicolons at the end of every single key value. Just always remember to do that. Height, width. All right, let's refresh it. There we go. It's starting to look a little bit better. It's cool. But now the issue is, let's just get this logo. So it needs a border around the logo. Border, I can do border color, but the border property can take in 3 values. I think it may, I don't know if it can take in more values, but the border width, the type, the border style, and the border color. So I'm just going to do white. So if I refresh that, there we go. We've got the logo. Cool. But now I notice how this is all not on the same line, and I want them to be on the same line. So I'm going to use, so in the parent, so the nav bar consists of this button group, or this link group, and this other link tag. So the nav bar class is parent to these two children, these two groups of elements. So the nav bar, I'm going to use a grid. And so I'm going to say display, and I can do display block, content, flex, flex box, grid, inline, inline block, inline flex. These are all the different display values. But I'm going to use grid. And how the grid works. So if you say like grid CSS, this complete guide to CSS using CSS tricks. This is a really good website if you want to learn what each CSS property, how it works. So inside the container or the parent, you do display grid, and then you have this other key, grid template columns, which, so here's a good example. Grid template columns, if I takes in a number of values, so 40, 50 pixels auto, 50 pixels, this determines how many columns there are on your web page. So 40, 50 pixels, this part's auto, correlates to that, 50 pixels that. So for ours, I might only want to have 2 columns. I might change it later, a column for this and a column for this one over here. So I can say grid template columns, and I can say like auto maybe, because I want it to be auto, and then so this part, I'm just going to do auto initially just because I don't know necessarily how it's going to work. And this login, I'm just going to make it maybe like, I don't know, 100 pixels wide. So if I come over here and I refresh, there we go. It's all in the same line, which is kind of nice. But this is not to the very end. Maybe I want that to be right aligned. So like towards the end of that. Let's see if there's a way I can do that. We can worry about that later though. Let's see what else. So it looks like all my links don't look similar to that. And it looks like spacing is a little bit off as well. All right. So I'm going to go back to the nav bar. I'm going to add some padding. I'm going to add 2 pixels of padding. I'm going to make the height also of the nav bar 20 pixels. Okay, starting to look a little center now, but now these links aren't, I want these links to be like center inside of here. Looks like login is centered, but the other links aren't. Let's see how I can do this. So with these href links, I could say like class nav link that's bad. Hold on. I'm going to highlight all of them. Do this quickly. Class equals nav link. And then I'm coming over here. I'm going to create a class or target that nav link class. I'm going to say margin top. I'm going to say explicitly say, hey, it's 0 pixels. Did it not change anything? Dang it. Let's see. So this is where it's nice to edit stuff inside of here. So we've got nav. Margin top 0. No, that's not what I want. Oh, I think it's because of the image. This is, that's why. So if I got rid of, whoa. That's not working. I'm going to move this image outside of that. Let's see if this works. That's awful. That's because of my grid layout. So I'm going to say like 20 pixels. So I've got 3 columns now. There we go. So now that's centered. Okay. So I don't even know if I need these nav link classes anymore. Yeah, let's just leave them there for now. All right. So these links have some default like styling to it. So it's all underlined. It's but purple or blue. So I'm going to target all of the links. How do I target an entire tag?
You could go div with anchors, like div space A, or if in this case, that's maybe a little not specific enough because you might have some other anchors further down that you don't want styled that way. So maybe like a,
Okay. So I can,
oh, you just do nav link.
Yep. So I can
like,
also target the nav link. So I can say, so this div space A says, hey, any place where there's a parent div followed by a child a tag, target. So I can just say the nav link here is text decoration, none, and I'll say color. So that's like the color of the text. I'm just gonna have it be black. So if I do that, no, that's a little bit better, but I see login over here is a little bit different. I'm just going to add this class to that as well. All right. Nav link. I can also say like, there's a way you can add multiple class names to an individual element. How do I do that?
Just with a space.
So if I wanted to add another space, I can say like login for the class. So this has nav link right here. I can also say login, say like text. I don't know if this is going to work. Text align, right? There we go. So it's aligned to the right now. We're starting to get somewhere. Starting to look kind of like it. I want to add, so I noticed that these have like little pipes next to them. I don't know how they did that. So I'm going to inspect what that looks like. So click there. I'm going to expand there. It looks like they just added pipes outside of the A tags. So what I can do is highlight all that, add a pipe there, refresh. There, I got pipes there. Cool. The Hacker News, that font type is a little different than Hacker News, but I want to target the entire body. So I'm going to say font family. I'm going to look at what font family I want to use. I'm going to use Verdana Geneva. So if I refresh that, cool. Starting to look similar. But it looks like these links, the font sizes are a little bit different. I can inspect specifically what font size it is. I believe it's 13 off the top of my head. So you can see a link tag. I'm looking down for font size. Oh, it looks like it's font size 10, maybe. Is that right? So I'm just looking. Okay. So I'm going to say, hey, the nav links, everything with a nav link, let's target the font size of 10 pixels. And now I can refresh. Ooh, that's ugly. That's not correct. So since it's not 10 pixels, I can come down here and literally press up and down and notice how it's increasing the font size by just pressing up and down or doing the scroll wheel. Yeah, I think it's 13. So font size is 13, but the nav link for the actual Hacker News is not 13 pixels. It's a little bit larger. So how do I target the very first element here? Like I can add like another class saying like title or something. What else can I do? I can do a first type of, but that might be different. We'll see if that works. So if I say like font size and say it's like 17 pixels, and I want the font weight, which is like whether it's bold or not. So I can literally type in bold, or I can use an actual number value to determine whether it's bold, which is 900, which also means it's bold. If I refresh that, cool. Oh, what the hell just happened? So Hacker News is large. Great, that's good. But it looks like login is also large, which I don't like. So I'm saying the first type of inside of its own, that has its own element or inside of its own parent. So the first type of A within here is targeting that. And the first A tag inside of Nav Bar is this one, which I don't want. So is there a way I can target that one specifically?
Well, you can either just give it a class of bold and then make a rule for bold on whatever thing you want.
Yep. So I can do like bold, which would be like a universal class. So this is very specific. And I can create a class just says bold, and I can just add this class, bold class, to anything inside my application that font weight that is bold. But I also want the font size as well. So I can also add like another class, like, I don't know, I can add like font size, like title or something like that. So what, is there another thing I can do?
You can give it an ID.
I can also give it an ID as well. So these are all correct answers. So it all depends on what you want to do. But I'm just going to say first child. See if this works. I'm not quite sure if it will. Probably the same. There it goes. So the very first child of works. Now let's add some margin. Uh-oh, why is it loading? First child, say like margin right. So I want to just do margin right. 5 pixels. Oh, not that. So add it. That's not what I want. I want a margin there. Maybe it's margin left. There we go. What else can we do? That's like, that looks pretty close to that nav bar. I don't know about this though, because this isn't as, these elements aren't as like centered anymore.
Yeah, you have to add some padding or margin to the bottom of that nav bar.
To the entire nav bar?
Well, to those links.
To these links, right? So I'm gonna call, yeah, I'm gonna say like ID, say nav link group, or like nav link container or something like that. But I'm gonna do nav link group. I'm gonna just up here, nav link group, padding. If I want to use the padding key and just target the bottom of this, how would I do that?
You can do 0 pixels, 0 pixels, and then what you want for the bottom, and then 0 again.
So instead of
Or
doing
just
like,
change padding to padding bottom.
yep. So margin top explicitly targets the top of the margin. I can also do like similar here. I can do like margin. Oh, but this targets the top, the bottom, or I'm sorry, top, left. I'm sorry, top, right, bottom, left. So clockwise. It starts at the very top, right, bottom, that way. If I do all 4. Let's actually do padding. It also works with padding. Same concept. Oh, geez, that's going to throw an error. It's still not working. Yeah. If I did like 5, still not working. Maybe I need margin. So this is where I would actually come in here and inspect it.
Didn't you make it an ID, so you need a hash and hashtag instead of a period?
Yep, you are 100% correct. Thank you. Still not working. So see, I can see like the margin, that the little green at the very bottom, that's the margin. But because I made this, the nav bar an explicit height of 20 pixels, it's refusing to like push it forward. but I don't want to spend too much time getting that centered. I could even do like margin top. I don't know, maybe 0 pixels. Nope, that didn't work. So we can like figure it out, but I don't want to spend too much time with that because it's close enough. This is what I mean. Like you can go down the CSS rabbit hole just trying to get something a little bit more aligned. All right. Let's go ahead and yeah, let's just quickly do the second part instead of the nav. So it's the nav. Let's do this little gray part. So I can create another div and so here, what do these look like? Like what should I use for this?
Ordered list.
An ordered list. So if I want to do an ordered list, what's the tag for that?
OL.
OL stands for ordered list, and then
LI.
and then LI. So 1, and then I can like 2, 3, 4, or whatever that's. So if I refresh this, there I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Let's just do one of those. So inside the list, this is where I probably should be doing some wireframing for that. But inside here, it looks like I'll need a div for this. I'm not going to worry about that triangle right now just because time. I'm going to do this link. Maybe I should do this one. And then this whole, I'm just going to make this entire section just one div just for time purposes. So I've got a div, and that is like, should I copy that? All right. And then I also have a div down here. So I just added like that first part and the second part for those two sections. Oh, what did I just do? Okay, we'll leave it for that right now. So here, for that entire comment container, I'm going to call it class. I'm just going to call it main container. And do main container. And the main container is going to be a background color, RGB, say like 245, 245, 237. So if I refresh, oh, what happened? I'm missing something. RBA, RG. There we go. Okay, so I've got this like this white space here, which I don't want. So where's that white space coming from? If I highlight it. So it looks like the ordered list has some built-in margin. Oh no, it looks like it's built-in padding. So if I click on that, and if I come over here to computed, I can see what is called the box, the box diagram, which will show you what specific, like the padding, the border, the margin of this specific element. So it looks like the entire ordered list is 100 or 1,140 pixels wide by 38 pixels tall. It looks like it's got 40 padding of left padding. So it's got 40 pixels of right padding. It doesn't have a border, but it also has got top and bottom margin of 16, which I don't want. So I can come over here, the main container. So I can say like, I'm just going to target the ordered list. Margin, I'm going to override that default 16 pixels. I'm going to refresh that. Cool. There we go. And then this div, I'm going to call it class. This is going to be a comment. And this is the other one is going to be like comment information or info. So the comment info, or it's what the, I'm just going to look at this again. So I can actually kind of like hover over to see what size this is. If I scroll down there, it looks like it's a font size of 10 pixels. Font size, 10 pixels. And the comment info, I don't know what that is, 5 pixels. Whoa. Font size, 5 pixels or something. Whoa, that's really small. So let's actually up those. I'm going to make it like 13 and maybe 10. Let's make it 15 pixels. Just for cool. Starting to look a little bit similar to this. Now, all these should technically be their own links right here. But for sake of time, I'm just going to call it a day there. So what questions do you have about the Hacker News or just CSS about all this? Just know that there's a plethora of values, like CSS values, like background color. There's a gazillion of them. If you understand grid or flexbox, you'll be in a good spot to like be able to like make your like reposition different elements on the screen. Those are like the hardest things, like display grid, display flexbox. That's where if you can understand that and like move things around, you'll be in a lot better position as far as like as far as the layout of your web page.
Are you gonna show any time this week Bootstrap introduction?
Yeah, I think we're covering that either, I don't know, Wednesday or something, or Thursday. Yeah. If you want to, yeah. So yeah, we'll be covering that later on this week. It'll make your life a lot easier instead of doing all this stuff manually. You'll still have to do some manual CSS, but it takes a lot of the heavy lifting off of you.
I was gonna ask, is this people like type up this stuff? It seems very tedious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I do it all the time.
Okay.
Yep. And it is. It just depends on how proficient you are and like how familiar you are with CSS. But yeah, you definitely have to type up some CSS. Even if you're doing in React, like there's some styling that you have to do to make your application look the way it wants, the way it's supposed to. But again, those CSS frameworks do a lot of heavy lifting for you.
I was gonna ask, like, how much work would go into, like, how much more work would go into this to make it more like dynamic? You know, like if you shrunk that page all the way down to like mobile size with all the pixels, would that mess it up or?
Check it out.
To make it responsive.
So if I click up here, this toggle device toolbar in Chrome, you can kind of see like, oh man, that is nasty. It is not mobile responsive. So yeah, you'd have to do some what is called media queries to like, hey, like is it at media, and then like max, or like min or max width. So like if the screen size changes to a specific min and max width, you'd have to overwrite these inside of the media query. So yeah, you'd have to make it mobile responsive. So you'd have to overwrite some of these inside of your media query. And I can do that real quick if I type in, I forgot what the media query. So yeah, you want a breakpoint. I just want to see what that looks like. Mozilla, come on. So yeah, if I just did copy this and did that instead of body, if I did like comment, font size, make it like 10 pixels. And then let's see what happens when I change the screen size. So if I come over here, all right, so if I drag this, so it's at 1100 pixels about. Oh man, this is really slow. Once I get to 600, so you notice how that changed? I can even do, where is that? Nav link. Nav link. Something like that. 20 pixels auto. I can also target the nav bar. But yeah, there's nothing preventing that. So it's the nav bar is going on another line, so it's overwriting that. So I can even say like, hey, the nav bar, instead of a height of 20 pixels, like make it 40 pixels. Get rid of that nav link.
And eventually you could collapse it into a burger menu.
Yeah, ideally that's what you'd want to do, is collapse that into like a, as you said, Jeremy, a hamburger. So there we go. But yeah, that's where you want to make it more responsive. And again, those CSS libraries kind of do all that heavy lifting for you. But you still need to do some CSS. All right. Any other questions?